In this video, I'm just going over how to make variables and how to use them. In the last video, we went over data types. We had string data types, so we did hello world, and we established that anything between these two quotation marks was a string. And for our number example, we did something like 5, and we were also able to do math with it, so something like 5 times 2. And we'll run those real quick. And we get hello world and an output of 10 from the math we did. But in a lot of programs, we typically want to store this output and use it later on. So we are going to create a string variable to store hello world, and we're going to create a number variable, and we're going to store this 5 times 2 in it. Let's go over just creating a number variable first, because that's the simplest one. We can use the dim statement to create a variable, and we'll call our number variable my number. And this creates a number variable called my number. And now we can take this output right here and see, we'll store that in my number. So now my number is equal to the result of 5 times 2. And we can use a print statement now to print my number. And I'm going to comment this out now. So we're just going to print my number. We'll compile that and run it. And we get the same result, 10. And we can also do math with my number because it's a number just like anything else. So we could do my number plus 3. And since my number is 10, this is doing 10 plus 3, which is going to be 13. And that's pretty much it for number variables. Another thing real quick on number variables is my number is currently equal to 10. So if you wanted to do something like my number equals my number plus 5, since my number is currently 10, or 5 times 2, we're saying my number equals what my number currently is, which is 10 plus 5. So this sets my number to 15 right here. So when we run this line, let me get rid of that. We're going to print my number, and this is going to print 15 now. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and comment. I'm going to actually just move this around real quick. I'm going to comment all this stuff at the top out, just so we can go over string variables. And a string is you can create a string with the dim command, just like you did my number. So we'll just do dim my string. But when creating a string variables, when you first create the variable, you need to have that $sign at the end of it. And that's just telling RCBasic that this is not a number, but this is a string. To show you what happens if you try to do it without it, we're going to just leave the $sign off for now, and we'll say my string equals hello world. So now let's try to compile that. And we get compile failed, error at line 10, must set number variable to number expression. So since this is a number variable, since it doesn't have the $sign, it's expecting us to put a number in it. So for us to make it a string, we have to have that $sign there. But you don't need the $sign every time you use a string variable, only when you first create it. So it's optional every other time. You can have the $sign every time you use the variable or not, but it is only required when you first make the string variable. So let's go ahead and print my string. And one other thing too, since I just ran across that, RCBasic is not case sensitive, so it doesn't have to match. Their variables don't have to match the case of what it's like when you make it. So I can do my string in all caps, and it's still going to be the same variable, and it'll print hello world. And just like numbers, you can add stuff to string variables too. And I'm just going to mix up the case again just to show that a little bit more. How are you? There we go. One last thing on variables is a shortcut to creating variables. So with my number and my string, you can create a variable just by saying variable name. Like, this right here is going to create a variable my number if it's not already created with the dim statement. So if you don't want to use dim, you could just do my number equals this, and that'll just create the variable right there. And we'll output that here. And with string, if you don't want to use dim, you can create a string like this. Just make sure the first time you create that variable, you put that $sign there. And compile that and run it. Alright, feel free to play around with that until you got a good understanding of it, and I will see you in the next video.